Hey, welcome everyone. Just to introduce myself, my name is Ka, and welcome to the Multicultural Organizing Panelist discussion. During this panel discussion, I hope that we can lend voice and understanding to organizing in communities of color. And just a little bit about me before we start. I am Mon. I was born and raised in Wausau. I'm the oldest of 6 children in my family, and I lived in Milwaukee for about 4 years when I went to school, and then I boomeranged back to Wausau. I was never a member of student council or anything like that when I was in school. I was politically aware, but I was never politically active until the beginning of this year. And that's the one thing I can thank Trump for, is bringing me to all the people that I've met since 2017. And maybe some of you have experienced the same since the beginning of the year. So I could go on, but let's get this party started. And let's have our panelists introduce themselves. Please state your name. If you hold a political office or any type of title, please state that also. Where you are from, your ethnicity, and what issues you have organized around.
Well, my name is Yi Lang Zhang. I'm on the county board representing District 19, and I'm also a member of the East Everett School Board of Directors. I'm of Hmong descent, and I've been in Wausau my entire life. So I've been involved with the community for a couple years now. I ran for office in 2014 and magically won somehow. So.
My name is Tony Gonzalez. I'm owner of EAG Interpreters, Hispanic Outreach. Very involved in the community, especially with the Hispanic community in the area. I'm part of an organization, well, a project called Torron Wausau. I got Macy here also. Non-political, okay, trying to work things with everybody, get it on the table. Also part of Wausau Metro Strong. And the main goal about all this is, try to see what we can do to make this area more welcoming, more safe and everything, and also with that, how to work with everybody and the best people possible to get our things solved and starting in our area and then going out of there to the whole state. So thank you for having me here.
My name is Angel or Angel Montes. I am a little political. So I am a community organizing director with the Democratic Party of Wisconsin. And we're working with the coordinated campaign statewide. And part of the work that I do, which is Martha Lanning's vision, our chair for the Democratic Party, is reaching out to diverse communities across the state and making our action teams that we're creating everywhere, including here in Wausau, represent the communities they serve. So that's what I'll be speaking to today.
I'm Dawn Limo Shigoni, and my husband, Art Shigoni. We have been involved for the past 20 years with a Call for Peace drum and dance company that's traveled around the world representing 7 or 8 cultures of the world. Basically, our message through drums and dance has been that all things are interconnected, and our mission and what we've been doing also two kinds of things, an educational component in schools and conferences, but we've also involved ourselves somewhat in a political stance that has to do with an event that took place in a book written now about the Cowboy Indian Alliance, Unlikely Alliances. So we're just developing the imagery of a Cowgirl Indian Alliance. So a book has been written about alliances across the country that involve Indian and non-Indian people.
All
My
right.
name is Art Shigoni, and I want to welcome you to my country. I'll be damned if someone's going to throw you out of my country without asking me first. When Columbus came over, we should have thrown him out. And I think right then and there, and then Monday, it should be. I was thinking, well, if they want to celebrate diversity and stuff, so you want to ignore us, well, then you can give us free gas on that day and free items and all the stuff that we weren't attributed to. But anyways, we have 11 tribes here in Wisconsin. And I don't agree, myself, I don't agree with what the governor is doing by having this Foxconn. It's got the last name Khan, giving them rights to, and not come to Wisconsin without asking the people about what they want and what they see fit. So I think that it's a bunch of BS. So I think they've overrun their rulings and stuff, and slapped us as citizens of Wisconsin in the face and disrespected us. And I think it's time we stop that. And and I'm glad that we have such a great panel here of people, diversity. It should have been like this all the way along. Our native and non-native voices should have been heard, and not silenced. And I'm glad that I'm with this great panel of speakers and people here, and we're going to make our voices heard very loud and proud, to let people know that we're not going to sit down and take it anymore. We want to be heard, we want to be respected and not disrespected. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Okay, so to facilitate this, my first question for the organizers are, when you're organizing locally and with your respective communities, what is the most, or what are the most difficult obstacles to deal with? And especially when you're dealing not just within your community, but outside of your community too, with local government and maybe even state government, what are those obstacles, and how do you get over them? So whoever wants to start.
I'll start on that one. With the Hispanic community, obviously the numbers that we have around this area, a lot of them are undocumented. So obviously it's very hard to assemble them and get them in one place. They have their opinions and everything. So that is the biggest challenge. However, it is a hugely important group to reach out and contact, and especially now, we're talking about second, third generation already. Their children are already eligible to vote. But as we were talking there earlier, how do we get young people into getting interested? Because if parents didn't have interest to start with, and they were actually turned off by politics, the children more than likely don't really care what goes on, but they really don't know how much it does affect them. So that is the biggest challenge. They're undocumented. And also you got to think of the fact that a good number of them are married to Americans, born Americans or citizens of the United States that can vote. And they usually have no clue what's going on in the political environment. So it's very hard to convince them and to make them realize how much this is affecting them, and how much, even we've had elections right here, the 86th Assembly a few years back, Mandy Wright, the margin was only 85 votes. Yep. So at that point, this small Hispanic community, guess what? We have an influence. We can make a difference. So the hard challenge is to get out there and to make them understand what's going on, and make them feel safe that they can come and participate in the process.
Are there certain ways that you found out that can help you get over that?
Food. Definitely food. You have a good, and I'm not kidding, I also run the soccer league here, and we have 10 teams. Over 90% of our players are Hispanic. Many of them are undocumented. And you put soccer and food together, it doesn't matter no more. They get there, and it sounds funny, but it is actual. There is no bigger passion that as Hispanics we share, but soccer and things like that. Soccer in particular. My team lost on Thursday. I'm very upset. And it upsets you that much. But yeah, that is a way to do it. But it takes participation. We had an event just recently with the Hmong community. We participated with the Hmong community, and there they were. They'll come out. So that is a way that we, and especially, when also we're talking about, when we talk about Hispanics, I'm Colombian. I'm from Colombian origin. The majority here are from Mexican origin. And we also, one of the big challenges too is that you have a pretty marked tier of social class, if you want to put it that way. those who have and those who don't. And that comes all the way back from a home country. I mean, that's the way things are. How do we get the higher class to start having heart for their fellow Latin Americans or Hispanics also, and participate in this whole process? So that is the challenge, to get them all together towards a common goal. So many times, believe it or not, when you heard this last election that 30% of the Hispanic vote went for Trump, and I'm not endorsing either one. Again, I want to make that sure, but it surprised me. I fell off. 30%? Who are these people? And then when you come to find out, it's probably second, third generation that don't have a direct connection with their home countries, okay, or the countries of their parents. Or many times in the Hispanic community, one thing that happens is that, like here in Wisconsin, 1 out of every 10 Hispanic is a business owner, okay? They're entrepreneurs. So a lot of them say, hey, if I get my competition not to come here, I'm securing my... So, we need to combat that and understand that there's plenty of room for everybody, and get people to understand and be more sympathetic to the culture that they come from. That's not it doesn't mean you stop being American or anything. It means that you just got a different culture, different background. Polka Fest is awesome. I go to it. Everyone there is American, but that's the things we got to appreciate.
Okay, anyone else?
In the Hmong community, we I specifically like to divide it into 3 categories. So, one is the elders, the other one's the young professionals, and obviously the third one is the youth. I call them youth, but they're typically the young students who just recently graduated from high schools, attending college, so on. The young professionals, I've seen that they are heavily engaged in the political field, whether it's voting, they exercise their right, they use their right to vote, they use their right to speak. So but those are usually typically the ones who are educated or who have gone to a higher education or a higher institute of some sort. Now, when talking about the elders, the elders, I have seen that they are very passionate about voting. They want to vote and they want to use it. The problem is that they don't know when to vote or where to vote. That's the biggest obstacle for them to overcome. I have seen elders that would walk 2 miles to go to the voting poll if they know where it is to vote. As a matter of fact, during the November election this past year, I met an old lady there who she was having problems communicating with the person at the poll because of the language barrier, and I ended up having to step in as interpreter and interpret for her. And the most amazing thing was that she had cataract, but yet she walked 2 miles to come and vote there. So you can see the passion among the elders, and like I said, the biggest obstacle for them is knowing when, where, and obviously the language barrier that stops them from voting. Those are the biggest obstacles for the elders. Now, regarding the young folks or the youth, I like to they are engaged. They know what is happening. They are aware of the obviously the Trump phenomenon and everything. They were aware of it during the election, but some of them didn't go out to vote. The question, it came down to being inspired, into them realizing how important, some of them didn't realize that their vote, they didn't even think their vote mattered. As a matter of fact, some of them they felt that they would rather be doing something else rather than exercising the right to vote. And it's just a matter of telling them how important and showing them how important and how close the election can be. And I think that's the most important part.
So I can speak a little bit to that. So I'm across the state. I'm from Mexico. I actually came here when I was 4 years old with my family. We came undocumented. I'm a citizen now, but that's why I'm actually here. I'm fighting for people that live in the shadows. It's very important for me. But the reason that the work that I'm doing right now is actually working with everybody. So I'm reaching out to members of the Hmong community, working with the African American community, Latinos, the Native community throughout the state. We're building neighborhood action teams with these groups. We have a couple teams that are already on Native land, Menominee and Oneida. Very excited to see them taking action. But the one thing that I've seen as far as why it can be difficult and why it takes a lot of time to be able to build these relationships is that the Democratic Party, or I would say groups in general, haven't been very intentional with our outreach. We go out there and we We try to tell people how to organize. We're here to organize you, is kind of the term that's used a lot. Or we're here to make sure that that you win. Ultimately, it's not our job, I think, as organizers or community leaders, whether you're a paid employee or a volunteer, to organize anybody. It's your job to empower people and show them how to kind of lift themselves up and be leaders within their own communities. And that's the steps that I've taken with the various communities that I work with, is not being there to, again, tell them I'm here, I'm your organizer, and I'm here to put you to work. It's like, I'm here through November 6, 2018. I'm working for the Democratic Party for the coordinated campaign, but once this campaign is done, I'm not going to be here, but you are. And this is the reason why you have to fight. So when I'm talking to Latinos, for example, I was talking to a young gentleman who was on, many people who are on DACA right now, and their main struggle is knowing that they're not all rapists and murderers, right? Which is the perception that the right would want to have you think. They're actually doctors and teachers and people that are important to the community for it to continue to survive. So from my perspective, is getting them involved, telling them instead of complaining and screaming at a TV, why don't you, let's do a phone bank that pushes our state legislatures or our congressmen, our senators to support the Dreamers Act, right? So don't just sit and complain about it. I'm empowering you, I'm providing you the tools that you need to be able to get active. And I think when you come at it from that perspective versus telling them I'm here to organize you, I think that you'll be very effective in whatever work that you're doing, because people want to be able to feel like they're independent, self-reliant, and that nobody's going to come and tell them how they should organize their communities.
Art, Don, do you want to add to that?
I think that we have 11 different tribes here, and I want to say put a big thank you out to Paul Domain, because he has News of Indian Country and Indian Country TV. And so that gets to all 11 tribes, including tribes out of Wisconsin as well. And that's a great thing that we have is that that's a kind of like a great smoke signals like that. But for our youth and our generation that are coming up, we have a lot of those problems with oil, drugs and alcohol on the reservations, so a lot of our young people that are of age to vote, they're like, well, why should I vote? Why should I do that? It's not going to help anyways, but we're trying to let them know that, yeah, your vote does count. And if if you're going to keep on just sitting around drinking and doing that, it's not going to, things aren't going to work out because you're not doing your part. So, and what the tribes have been doing, which I agree with, is that, they're caught selling or dealing drugs like that, they're kicked off the reservation. Their entitlement is taken away, which I agree with, It's like because, those drugs are very lethal and very bad, because if they don't start doing that, they're killing off our youth, before they get a chance to graduate or enjoy life as it should be on the reservations. And I also feel kind of a two-parter thing here too, is that, when back in the 70s, they came up with casinos and bingo halls, which was a good thing, because the government promised Native American people that the government would say, well, we're going to take care of you. Yeah, like hell, you took care of us. You put us on these reservations and you didn't do shit for us. All you did is watch us, you put us on this little piece of land and stuff like that. And it wasn't the Native Americans that wanted reservations, it was the government that decided for us, instead of letting us decide for ourselves. They said, well, if we put these little Indians here on this reservation, we can watch them and we'll give them kamats and whatever they need and stuff. We'll just make sure that they're just staying there so they don't do anything. But the Native American communities got wise and started working for themselves, the bingo halls and the casinos, making money for themselves, sending our children with the money to colleges and building their own colleges on the reservations, bringing back the languages, bringing back the cultures, and and I think that there was a part there too that got kind of a miss back in the 80s when the spearfishing treaty rights came up. The news media somebody forgot to tell people that these fishing and hunting rights that we have to do those, and if we don't do them, they'll be taken away from us. And so a lot of non-Indian people that were up at the boat landings had no idea of the fishing and hunting and treaties that we had signed with the United States or the government, and for that matter, even the government. We still have over probably, I would say, 480 treaties that are still in the government in Washington, D.C. That aren't even looked at. They're not even looked at on the books, you know, so we need to start looking at those, you know, and bringing those back. Had people taken the time to say, okay, yeah, these Native Americans are living on these reservations, and they didn't realize that Native Americans were doing their part with the fishing and the gaming and the hunting. They had fish hatcheries on the reservations, and they're restocking the lakes back to what they were taking. And the anglers and the motorboats were killing and taking more fish than the Native Americans were. And so people need to look at that, like, how can that be, you know? And one of the things that people were, I kind of laughed at it too, because it's like, if you ever tried to stand up on a boat with a spear that's got 3 or 4 prongs on it, and try to get 2 fish on one spear, I don't think it can be done, you know? And then all the fish that we get or have taken, all of them have to be weighed, measured, and counted. Now, when the fishing and the anglers do that, they don't have to be measured or fished or counted or anything like that, you know. So we're subjected to discrimination in that way, you know. But and we have people, tribal officials and other leaders that have stepped up to go to the polls and vote and go out to the and put signs out and go to different places on the reservation to get the elders to come out and vote and pick them up and take them to the voting polls and stuff like that, which I think is really awesome. We got quite a few different reservations that are doing that and making them understand what it's all about, this democratic process and stuff. So I think that we still have a long ways to go, but we're making it little by little in great strides, you know, and then working with other communities and making these other people realize that they don't have to be afraid of Native American people, or, you know, because back in the 70s, there was something to be said back then, you know, there was a lot of bad people, but it was not so that they wanted to protect the hunting and fishing rights as well. But, you know, like all of the panel here, you know, we all have our struggles. You know, it's about time that, you know, and I feel really bad. I think the president, for first hand, should have been slapped upside the head for making all the undocumented people here afraid to live in this country. And it's like, yeah, I would be afraid too if I said, well, I'm going to step out my door. You know, am I going to get kicked out of this country or what? And none of these people had anything to do. They were born here. Why not let them stay? It's not their fault. You know, it's part of it. I feel if you were born here, you have a right to live here just as well as anybody. It's the land of the home of the, what is that? Land of the what?
Land of the free.
The free? Home of the brave. So all these, you know, they pay their taxpayers, so they have a right to be here as anybody else. So I commend them, and I'll be damned if somebody's got to take my brothers and sisters out here. I want you guys, you're going to stay here. Thank you.
So my next question is, I want to talk about stereotypes. So, like, what are like the most surprising stereotypes that you guys have experienced or members of your community have experienced in northern Wisconsin? And what do you want to tell the audience? I mean, when they hear those stereotypes, what do you want them to say to those people that are saying those exact same stereotypes to our audience here?
Well, for myself, I think that ignorance is bliss. And that for some of the things that people come out to say, and the boat landings was a perfect example of that. You know, the people that were drinking and stuff like that, and they're calling us timber niggers and go home. I'm like, go home? Yeah. we are home, where are you guys gonna go, you know, try to kick us off our own lands, you know, and, you know, one of the things about mascots as well is that Native Americans feel that, this is just me, okay? I feel anytime that you're using caricatures, images of real people and stereotyping them, you're disrespecting them, and that's why we feel that it's not right to use caricatures or mascots in any culture whatsoever, because you're demeaning them. You're demeaning their culture, their history, and who they are as a people. You're oppressing them again, and that's why we don't want mascots. We want to take those mascots down, which some have gone down, but the ones that stay, you know, and I have to give a lot of tribes credit too, because some of them are, when the schools do change their mascots and logos, some of the tribes are putting money to help those schools to with leather jackets and shirts and t-shirts and stuff to put on their new logos and stuff to help them out that way. But and I feel that when you stereotype anybody of color, of ethnicity, you know, we need to be respectful to one another. We need to help out each other, you know, because life is too short. You know, we're all on this Mother Earth, you know, and that's what this medicine wheel talks about. A new people will emerge. And there's different colors on here, the red, the white, the black, and the yellow. And we all come to live on this Mother Earth in peace, balance, and harmony. And no one on this is greater than each other, unless you're Donald Trump. But anyways, when we come together like this is a prophecy that was foretold by different Native American people. When we come together like this, we're supposed to help each other, you know, and to maintain, to carry on, and you know, so that is kind of happening right now. And I feel that the more that we have panels like this to go out and outreach, you know, to educate, to let other people know that who and what we are as a people, you know, that's what makes us all work together and live together, you know, because take these hurricanes and all the things that are happening, you know, all these shootings, and it didn't matter, you know. One of the things is that bullets do not have race on them either. It doesn't matter where they hit. And but I just want to say that it's good that we have panels like this. I think we should have more like this. Keep it up, and to get more people involved, to know about our cultures. And if you hear of something, a fiesta or Hmong New Year, please go to these events, because you're going to learn a lot by eating their food and learning about their culture. And it's not something, you know, I always learn a great deal about another culture, and they're pretty much similar to mine. They like to eat, I like to eat, you know?
Yeah. One thing I said to Angel was, you should go to a Hmong funeral.
Yes.
Because Hmong funerals, they are, they're public, anyone can go. I mean, don't be disrespectful, go sit in the back, you know, but
Don't show up with a bib, right?
right, yeah, but you know, yeah, the thing is, I said Angel, like, go to a Hmong funeral, I mean, just sit in the back and just watch what goes on. I mean, you know, that's one thing of exposing yourself to the Hmong community. I mean, you might get some weird looks like, who is this guy, you know, but if you sit, you know, quietly in the back and just watch, you know, you get to see a lot of interaction and stuff like that too. So.
And also, I would have to say that the Hmong funerals are much like the Native American funerals that we have. We have a 4-day ceremony, 4 days for our people, you know, and we do our things and have our spiritual leaders and our drums and our feasts and stuff like that. And it's very respectful that we do that as well, you know. So yeah, ours is, I would say, kind of open too.
Also, I've worked the past 20 years in Madison, Wisconsin, at Bayview, which is a low-income housing of 102 townhouses. It's an international neighborhood, but it's primarily Southeast Asian people. So I've seen what's gone on there in terms of what's needed, which is people coming into the community, getting to know people, and actually taking them to the voting polls. I appreciate everything that I heard from the panel, because I think one of the ways that we can all help in regards to voting, and also our biggest challenge today is how do we bring communities together? You know, how do we work together? How do we realize that we're really all brothers and sisters in this journey of reclaiming, you know, maybe not only our state but our whole country. And I think one of the things that Art and I have done is got involved with NAACP in Madison. They welcome people to come and learn about what their issues are. And I realize that within communities like this, they're pretty focused on the needs of their own communities, their families, and sometimes it is hard to necessarily pay attention to what's all going on politically. But all of us who are getting engaged, the best thing is to establish some relationships with people that wherever you are, you know, befriend someone, and then, you know, eventually things like this that take place, you can bring them along. We just need real effort, personal, one-to-one relationships, because everybody's kind of hurting, and even in these communities now, they're recognizing now what's happening to them as a result of who's leading our country right now. So one last thing about, this is a recent book, Unlikely Alliances. I'm just going to show you, this is the Wisconsin State Journal history of the Fishing Treaty Rights Days. It's a whole piece that was created. It was in the news every day. This is the time that Art and I met back in 1989. Senator Anyway came to this state at the tune of $500,000 to really discover that it was the fishing boats in northern Wisconsin on those lakes, and the motor boats were killing more fish than ever the Native Americans were in terms of taking the fish. So one of the prophecies that one of the men that was in the news all the time was a man by the name of Nick Hawkins. He was kind of the target for shooting at on the lake. He was our main lead dancer along with Art in our Call for Peace Drum and Dance Company. And he did this, what Art spoke of, the Ashkeabama Zing. And it basically says when the water turns to poison, you no longer can eat the fish. A new people will emerge, and they'll have a choice of two paths or two roads. Winona LaDuke is a well-known Native woman, and she describes those paths as either one being of greed and the other one being green, or that we also need to go down this pathway to a more sustainable world, but mindful of Native wisdom guiding the way into this pathway into the future. And probably a lot of you know more that are paying attention to a lot of things that are happening, at least environmentally, but that China and India are leading the way now in terms of electric cars, renewable energy. They're way ahead of us. Something like 13 million jobs now is being created in China. Richard Engel just did a report on it.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Angel, you want to say something?
Yeah, I wanted to say actually 2 points. I think one is when it comes to stereotypes, so your original question is that I think that people make the assumption that people from diverse backgrounds don't care, that they don't vote because they really don't care what's going on. And I think that it's a stereotype, because it's not that people don't care, it's just that nobody's ever reached out to them. And I think ultimately what's I think very important from the reverse, looking at it from a diverse community perspective, I would say that a lot of people don't want you to go in there and again tell them what they should care about. So I keep hearing, and I heard this before, about listening. So going in there and actually truly listening and being vulnerable to whatever criticism they may have, of what you're presenting and not going on attack mode, if you want to put it that way. So again, listen, be vulnerable, and ultimately don't assume that they don't care just because they don't participate. They just don't have the same opportunities sometimes. So we want to go in there and provide them, find that leadership in those areas that can provide opportunities for their people.
Well, stereotypes. I don't like the stereotype that Hispanics are good dancers. Because I'm a damn good dancer. No, just kidding. No, you know, one of the things here in America in particular is that Hispanics, we're all Mexican. Every single one of us, and we don't even speak Spanish, we speak Mexican. Okay? And that is incorrect in many ways. Not that I'm offended if anybody thinks I'm a Mexican or anything, but the thing is, when you get into the serious conversations about things that we have to do, you have to be mindful of people's cultures and how we've grown and the things, where we come from, the distances and everything. And that brings me to, you know, just because somebody is not born in this soil, it doesn't make them less American. My two older children were born in Colombia, and because of my citizenship and working at the embassy, they are American citizens, okay? And they don't know anything but America as their home country, and their culture and everything is that way. We have the situation with DACA. They said, well, they weren't born here, so they don't care. Well, many of them even served in the military. So that's kind of a stereotype, thinking, you know, you're not from here, so you don't care. That's not true. You know, I dare to tell people sometimes, I think many of you would remember John Lynn, the American Taliban, right? Where was he born? In America? Where was his heart? Not here with us. Where other people that come from abroad and we care. We want to be here. Go ahead. I guess we got a couple minutes.
Yeah, we got a couple minutes.
Is that the bell?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's the dinner table.
You know, obviously in the Hmong community, there is, if we just talk about stereotypes, there's numerous among stereotypes. You know, the Hmong community
We're wrapping up.
the Hmong community has flaws.
Yeah.
The Hmong community has flaws, but definitely, you know, some of the stereotypes that I find very interesting is obviously that Hmong eats dogs. You know, all to the point where every Hmong men beat their wives, and to the point where they're saying that Hmong women are easy to date. You know, that's stuff those are stereotypes that are in the community. As a matter of fact, actually, Paul, who's a very famous professor in Minnesota, actually told me that there was one time that a senator actually came to Minnesota to investigate to see if Hmong people eat dogs, it's interesting. It's amazing at the amount of stereotypes out there. But then I always like to say is that, you know, America's kind of the place where, you know, where everybody is, where they're always hearing about the magical land outside. You know, they're always hearing like what Laos is like, what China is like, what Mexico is like. It's kind of an area where, you know, where people kind of they're listening to rumors and etc. I oftentimes think that it's ignorance. You know, they don't know what's actually there. I had a supervisor approach me a couple of weeks ago that asked me, "Is it tradition in the Hmong community to pee in your front yard?" And I'm like, that's completely, you know, I think it's just ignorance. You know, oftentimes I think it's just ignorance.
I want to add one little quick thing that falls between the stereotype and the challenges, which is anybody that's running here for office, please listen to this. Don't assume.
Yes.
Because the moment, you know, I had a conversation with somebody at one time, and he said to me, "Well, but you're Hispanic, you're a Democrat." I wouldn't say I wasn't, I'm not saying I am, but don't take that assumption. Work with the person, get to know the person, and then you will have somebody that is interested in your agenda and needs you. So no assumptions, please.
Yeah. So I want to take a moment, if you guys all agree, like 3 questions from the audience, because you guys probably have questions. So just 3 questions, because I know we're moving on. So anyone have a burning question they want to ask?
I am a member of our Wisconsin Revolution, and I'm in Cedar Point, so central Wisconsin. how can I help get the Hmong community involved politically? I feel like it's like take me to your leader, but I want to have them be involved. I want to do outreach and educate and promote. When I was canvassing during the presidential primary, you're right, they wanted to vote, but they did not know when the election was or where to go vote. So I could, but that was so sad to me.
Do you have someone who is Hmong on your staff?
No,
You need one.
I know.
You
How
need
do
one.
I? Yes.
You need one
Yes.
that speaks Hmong.
I know.
And can read and write it.
And one of the things that I was astonished by, and Terrence, you can help me out here, was that we're trying to encourage voter registration, and this website for the state is only in English and Spanish. I mean, how detrimental to a huge minority population in Wisconsin.
I think that's the first thing you need to do.
How do I?
Sure. So just to add on a little bit, I think first is you need to educate yourself with the Hmong community. Get yourself to know the Hmong community specifically. Mandy Wright is considered a sister of the Hmong community due to the fact that she actually goes out to Hmong events, she went to Hmong funeral, she went to Hmong celebration, she went to the Hmong New Year's. She just engulfed herself with the entire Hmong community. You expect to meet some of the clan leaders specifically because majority of the Hmong people are still under the clan structure system. I was like Brad Carter brought it back. And he was entirely right. He said that in the Hmong community, oftentimes people are asking him who are the leaders in the Hmong community, and they're always saying Dr. Maisi, Yiling, Kampong, or Mary. But that's not the truth. The truth is that there's also the clan leaders that are also involved, who still has a very strong. They're strong organizers. If you relay information to them, they can relay it out to huge groups of people within minutes. I'll give you a very good example. If you can organize them, because the Hmong community was able to organize through the clan structure, they were able to elect the most Hmong elected officials in the entire history of their ever existence to this day. There's 17 Hmong individuals in 18 positions into this day because of the fact that they were able to utilize the clan structure system to get the word out, to tell them where to vote, and to get them to go there. But that's only possible if you can build that relationship with them.
So how do I start?
To counter Yiling, you can go to the clan system and do that too, but you'll only reach the elders.
Okay.
You will not. I mean, it's hard to get the youth if you go through the elders, and it's hard to get to the working Hmong, your second group that you put them into. So what you need to do is you need to go to colleges. A lot of Hmong, there are a lot of Hmong students who are just, all they're doing is studying. They don't have any time to do political
I'm Chinese,
stuff.
I know.
Yeah. So you need to go there. And I would invite you guys, to contact your local Democratic Party. I mean, they might not know of anyone, but they might know of someone who can connect you to someone else.
Okay, because I was, when I did stuff at the party, there was representing Asian culture, it was me, and it's older too, so it's just how to reach it. So definitely starting with the emphasis that there is a Hmong student group at point, and so that would be maybe my starting point.
And I think for any of the groups that you want to reach, I would even say the Hispanic group, and like Yiling was saying, educate yourself about, or whoever's doing it, because you want to be authentic.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, it's not like election time comes, I'm Hmong, I'm American.
No, this is a long.
No, and I don't mean, I said, if you show really authentic concern, people come.
Yeah, I think our first goal is, voter registration and engagement, and I would love for them to be progressive, but really it's just, I want that voice to be heard.
Yeah. Anyone else have a question?
Yeah, I'm not so sure this is a question as much as a statement. I'm Andy Groenick, one of the million candidates for governor. So how do you make it easy, all of you? On this panel, the difficulties of reaching the Hmong community, or the Latino community, or the Native American community. I will tell you that Donald Trump made the opposition easy. One of the legs on his stool was to say, I'm not going to let somebody who doesn't look like you get your job, right? Mm-hmm. Isn't that kind of the bottom line of what he said? So if we're going to effectively compete, what we need to do is think about, in each of our communities, which really should be one community, how do we make it easy? Because that's what you're saying, right? How do I easily access the Hmong community so that we have the opportunity to make sure that the message is efficient and we can act now? So as you're together on that panel, I'm going to challenge each of you to think about that as it relates to communities of color. We need to work together. We need to communicate efficiently. And we need to understand that this mission matters. The other thing, and to your point about being sincere, the reality is I don't come from politics. I'm a business guy. And when you look at communities who are wondering, gosh, all these promises are always made and then not delivered, there's great truth to that. We have to find people who are running for office who legitimately care about delivering on promises so that the kinds of things that each of you are fighting for and communicate on that panel actually happen. So let's figure out how to make it easy. We know it's hard. How do you make it easy? That's my question to you guys. So anybody can answer that one.
Well, I think just by what we're doing right now, what you're doing right now, you're our ears, our feet, our eyes, you're the messengers now. We just gave you different things to do, so take those and go into your community and share those, or come up and ask more questions and get more information on what you need and who to contact and stuff. And we'll be more than happy to help you out, or come to more of our casinos.
I actually have one comment. I would push back just a little bit on what Ka said. When you said about reaching out to communities that maybe you don't represent, that's literally what I'm doing on a daily basis. And for me, it's kind of going to what Tony said, being very curious about the community itself and learning, so that when you go in there, you don't actually make the same stereotypes that we're saying here you shouldn't be making. But I think the curiosity itself, and not wanting to be their leader, because that's not your role, but wanting them to be leaders themselves. I think that's ultimately, you send that message, I think you can build some really good relationships, regardless of what racial group you're reaching out to.
I think to add to that as well, I also would heavily encourage elected officials or anyone that's running for office not to only seek out the Hmong community during election time.
Yes.
For you to actually show that you are sincere about them, for you to actually care about them, to join them whether there's an election. I think that's the most important. Being genuine.
Yeah.
You do.
Okay, so as promised,
Big
one more
voice.
question or comment.
I just had a question, what comes to my mind for me, working in a little town and public, I think of the school liaison that the communities, Hispanic, they go to those people because they speak their language, and I'm thinking about if we go and help them, we want to find out, learn more about your community, your people, what your issues are, and how can we do something like, I think the school might be one way to go, and, because they're used to working, in a public way, so maybe that would be nice.
I'll tell you that we have here in Wausau approached Wausau East, Wausau West, DC Everest, and there is still some resistance, okay, of any other than white groups to approach and talk to them. So the solution to that I see is we need people like yourself to be a part, like, hey, you know what, this is not just white privilege, we're working together. This person in the community that pays taxes for this school, and she belongs to the larger group and everything, she wants to see this happen too. So one of the things that I say is, in particular, this election, if you're going to fight the money machine, if you're going to try to match the money machine, we're not going to do it. It takes people power, people like everyone that's here to get together and quit that we're minorities, black, Hispanic, or anything. We're not minorities. We're all human beings. Is that a minority? I think that's the majority of the world, And that's what we need to do, go together and break that and be able to bring education to schools the way it should be, that we live in diverse society and we all need to be working together.
Well, that's great, Tony. Thank you very much for everyone coming.
Okay, folks, this is the end of this session, but it was really a tremendous discussion. And I have here with me the president, or the co-chair of our revolution. You heard him earlier today in the General Assembly, but he was in this session. And let's have a few words about what were you hearing and what's the message you're going to take forward from this?
Well, from this particular session, I think one of the best messages that came out was about the diversity within the communities that we tend to stereotype or marginalize in Wisconsin, especially northern Wisconsin. And you heard a lot about the diversity in the Hmong community, diversity in the Latino community, and how integrated everyone is, because now we're coming into this, and I'm glad that this was part of the discussion, we're so many generations into it now that we're treating communities as if they're immigrant communities who no longer really see themselves as immigrant communities because they're third, fourth generation. These are people that have no memory of anything other than the United States. And I think that was the key to get out of today's discussion. And that's one thing that so many people miss in politics, is that you're seen as different, you're seen as being completely alien sometimes in a community. That's not the case. The difference between a grandparent, a great-grandparent, and the grandchildren and their political views on immigration, conservatism, progressive politics, and everything else comes down to experiences and resources and what they're exposed to. And I think that was the biggest thing for me.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, folks. Now we're breaking for lunch.